If I were to take a string and stretch it from San Diego to Tokyo, and that was eternity, your life on earth would be just a little tiny millimeter compared to what eternity is going to be like. You're going to spend more on that side of life than you do on this side of life. So what on earth am I here for? You're here to get ready for the future.
Life now is preparation for eternity, and Rick Warren reminds us that we have the example of Jesus' temptations and how he overcame because his eyes were fixed on eternal values and eternal purpose. I'm Ken Powell, your host of FCCI's Pathway to Purpose podcast, and you're going to find great benefit from this second part of Rick's message about leadership challenges as he provides the strategy to overcome and walk in victory. And speaking of walking, I was on the treadmill at the gym this morning as I was listening to A.W. Tozer's timeless work, The Knowledge of the Holy, where he speaks about our need to remain in the tension between this world and the world to come. He writes, "We who live in this nervous age would be wise to meditate on our lives and on our days long and often before the face of God and on the edge of eternity. For we are made for eternity as certainly as we are made for time, and as responsible moral beings, we must deal with both." As we heard in that opening clip from Rick Warren, and as he'll share more about our life now as preparation for eternity, I'd like to set the context of that eternal reality with a few paragraphs of a chapter from John Mark Comer's book, Garden City, where he writes about the new earth. He says, the word new is kainos in Greek. It can be translated renewed, kind of like after you finish restoring an old broken down house or car or piece of furniture, and you say it's like new. That's the idea. This isn't about God scrapping the earth and starting over. This is about God stripping it down to the studs, clearing out all the junk and grit and grime and making it new again. And in this new and renewed world, we won't be lounging around on a cloud with a loincloth on singing Amazing Grace for millennia on end. Honestly, that sounds a little like the other place. Read Revelation. The last two chapters of the Bible are all about the future, what all of human history is building up to. And the story doesn't end with us going away to heaven, but rather with heaven's invasion of earth. We see Jesus and his followers who have died coming back from heaven to rule over the earth. The closing image isn't of a cloud or a harp or Raphael and his floating cupids. It's of a city with walls and gates and streets and dwellings and a river and a forest and culture. As I said earlier, it's draped in language straight out of Genesis, a new heaven and a new earth, the tree of life. No longer will there be any curse. They will reign. So it's not just a city, it's a garden city. This is what's waiting for us, not an eternal vacation in the sky, but an eternity of working and resting in this world completely remade from top to bottom by the Creator, ruling over the earth side by side with Jesus himself forever. This is the hope of Jesus. Well, if you haven't read John Mark Comer's book, Garden City, please do, and I hope that excerpt encourages you to do that. But now let's hear from Rick Warren as he reminds us how we need to avoid the pitfalls of passion, position, and possession, with our eyes fixed on all that God has promised us through Jesus when we spend eternity co-laboring with our Savior on that glorious new earth we await with great anticipation. Here's Rick.
You ever thought about, well, if God's going to take us to heaven when we die, why does he put us here on earth for 60, 80, 90 years? I mean, why not just create us and take us there? Why does he put us here in this land of suffering and sorrow and sadness and sickness and problems and pressures and pain and trials and tribulation and troubles, stress? Why? This is a test. This life is a test. It's a trial, it's a test. It's a temporary assignment. It's stewardship. God is testing you to see what you're worthy of handling in heaven. This is the warm-up act for the real act. You're going to only spend 60, at the most 100 years on this planet. That really isn't very much long. If I were to take a string and stretch it from San Diego to Tokyo, and that was eternity, your life on earth would be just a little tiny millimeter compared to what eternity is going to be like. You're going to spend more on that side of life than you do on this side of life. So what on earth am I here for? You're here to get ready for the future. And God put you on this planet to do 5 things and to practice those 5 things so that when you get to heaven, you're not a doofus. You know how to do it. Okay? He put you here to learn those things. One of them is to learn to love. Learn to love God and learn to love your neighbors yourself. Jesus summarized the whole Bible. One day a guy's walking by and says, "Hey, Lord, what's the most important command in the whole Bible?" Jesus said, "That's not hard. I could summarize the whole Bible in 2 sentences. All the law and all the prophets. I'm going to give you cliff notes on the Bible. Here it is. Love God with all your heart and love your neighbor as yourself." Bingo. It's all about love. So, what's the problem with that? Well, the problem is these 3 traps. The first is the lust of the flesh, which is passions. It's the temptation to feel. And then possessions, the temptation to have. And then position or popularity or power, which is the temptation to be. You'll be a god if you eat this. Jesus is in the wilderness, and before he starts his ministry, it says, Jesus was led of the Spirit into the wilderness to be tempted of the devil. Did you know sometimes God leads you into trials? Sometimes God leads you into the desert. Sometimes God leads you into tough times. It's the will of God. And while he's there, he's tempted. Now, the first temptation is Jesus is hungry. He's fasted for 40 days. And the devil comes and says, "Hey, I know you're hungry. I know you've got physical needs. You've got bodily needs. We all have bodily needs. You have physical needs. You have sexual needs. And God says to Jesus, I know you're hungry. Why don't you just turn these stones to bread?" Question. What's wrong with Jesus eating bread after he ends a fast? Nothing. 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 What was wrong was he said, "Turn these stones to bread and you eat them." The temptation is not the bread. The temptation is for Jesus to use the power he's been given to bless other people, to use it on himself. That's the temptation. Have you ever been tempted to turn stones to bread? No. Why? You don't have the ability. I have never been tempted to turn stones to bread. Why? I don't have that ability. Listen very closely. Satan doesn't just tempt you in your weaknesses. Satan tempts you in your strengths. He doesn't care if you use your strengths as long as you use it for the wrong motivation. You may have the ability to close deals, and you're incredible at closing deals. He doesn't care if you close deals as long as you do it for your own ego. He doesn't care if you make money. He doesn't care if you build a business. He doesn't care if you succeed in life. He's happy for you to, as long as you do it for the wrong motivation. We always worried about, well, Satan's going to tempt my weakness. Of course he's going to tempt your weakness, but he also tempts your strength. He will tempt you to use it for your own benefit. Jesus was not given the power to turn stones to bread for his own benefit, for his own gratification, for his own lust of the flesh. Jesus had that ability to feed the 5,000. What is it in your life that you're good at? That will be your first temptation. That will be your first temptation. It will be the temptation to use an ability or a talent that God has given you, and it came from God, and you know it came from God. I have a son who has an ability to make money. He was born an entrepreneur. He's just stinking good at it. And by the time he was 30, he was way ahead of all of his goals in life. He just knows how to do it. But fortunately, he's kept his head on, this was not given to me for myself. So the lust of the flesh is the temptation to use what talent you got to benefit yourself, to satisfy yourself. And you know when you're going to get this temptation? When you're tired. And when you're tired, then Satan comes and whispers in your ear, you deserve a break today. You're working so hard for the Lord. You're working so hard for your family. What's this little thing over here? This is no big deal over here. It's okay. Use some of your talent for yourself. It's a trap. The second temptation Jesus has, Satan takes him up on the hillside and shows him all the wealth of the world, all the treasures of the universe. And Satan says, all these things, that's materialism, all these things will I give you if you'll fall down and worship me. Just once. Not do it the rest of your life. Just one time. All these things. Well, the second temptation, the lust of the eyes, is the temptation to sell out your soul for more money, to sell out your integrity, to sell out whatever in order to make more, to fudge a deal, to shave, to tell a lie, to not represent something clearly in a sale in order to make more. All these things will I give you if you just do it my way. That's the lust of the eyes. I have to tell pastors this all the time. I have trained close to 500,000 pastors around the world personally. And my team has probably trained another 500,000. So about 1 million people have been trained pastors in purpose-driven in the last 40 years. And I have to tell pastors, you can't get up and back off on something you need to say because that deacon doesn't want you to say it, and he's going to loan you the Winnebago. Or the condo in Palm Springs, or whatever. You cannot compromise that. That's all these things will I give you if you'll just not say it the way it really ought to be said. Then Jesus is taken to the temple, and the third temptation, and he takes him up on Temple Mount on the highest peak of the pinnacle, and Satan says, hey, look at this. Lord, why don't you do this? Jump off this pinnacle, and angels will come and they'll catch you. You know you're not going to die. You're the Son of God. Jump off the pinnacle. Angels will catch you. It'll be really cool. Everybody go, yay, God, look at this. We know you're the Son of God. Yay, yay, God, you are the Son of God. And everybody will worship you. That's what Satan told him. What is wrong with Jesus being worshiped? Nothing. Nothing. It's that the way to Jesus to being worshiped was through the cross, not through showing off. Not by showing off. And the third temptation in your life will be the temptation to do the spectacular, to show off, and to use whatever talent you've got. And people go, yo, man, look how good wow, that's just incredible. Woohoo! No, the way to glory is through suffering. The way to character is through pain. The way to the crown is through the cross, not through showing off. And that will be the third temptation in your life. I'm telling you this because I want you to make it to the finish line. Now, the antidote to these three traps of leadership. Oh, by the way, all three of these issues, lust of flesh, lust of eyes, pride of life, or sex, salary, and status, every single advertisement ever made appeals to one of those three desires. Every single advertisement ever made appeals to the lust of flesh. You'll feel good. Oh, I'm using this shampoo. It thrills me. I tingle as I'm, whoo, baby, this is great. Okay, it feels good, or you're going to be envied. You're cool because you got a little logo here that said, I paid $100 more for this t-shirt than you did. You know? And I'm so insecure in my identity, I need other people's brands to make myself feel good. I could buy a no-brand shirt for a tenth of the price, but I need brands to prop up my identity. When my kids were little, I used to pay them a nickel every time they were watching a commercial and could tell me whether it was lust of the flesh, lust of the eyes, or pride of life. I realized that was materialism. Okay, I know that. Okay. But it was one way of getting my kids to be alert to the wiles of Satan and go, okay, look, they're appealing to status there. Eat this food and everybody will love you. Drink this drink and you'll be popular and everybody will love you. And all, is it lust of flesh, lust of the eyes, pride of life? Passion, possession, or position. I just wanted to be able to see it in society. Now, as I said, there are 3 antidotes to these temptations of leadership. This is for your family, it's for your business, it's for your ministry, it's for every area of your life. The antidote to the lust of the flesh, the temptation to feel, is integrity. Now, what is integrity? Integrity, most people think integrity means honesty. Yeah, it includes honesty, but it's so much more than just honesty. Now, integrity doesn't mean perfection. If you had to be perfect to have integrity, no one would have integrity because nobody's perfect. Nobody's perfect. Nobody gets it right all the time. But integrity means your heart's leaning in the right direction. The word integrity comes from the word integer or integer, which means a unit of one. And integrity actually doesn't mean honesty, it actually means wholeness. It means instead of your life being divided up like pieces of the pie, your life is the whole. You're the filling in the whole thing. That you don't segment your life. If you segment your life and say into pieces, like pieces of pie, say, this is my church life, and this is my business life, and this is my home life, and this is my golf or sports life, and this is my sex life, and this is my secret porn life, and this is my, anytime, the moment you segment your life, you've lost your integrity. Because you're not whole. You're segmenting your life. In classic Greek culture, the ages of Socrates and Plato, Euripides, all these guys, one person would often play many parts in a play, and they would pull out a mask and they'd come out and they'd play one part of play, and they'd go back and they'd change masks, they'd come out and wear another part in a play, and they'd go back and change mask and come out and play another part in a classic Greek play. And those people who changed their masks were called hypokritos. What do you think we get from that? Yeah, hypocrite. Hypocrite means that you act different ways with different people. Integrity doesn't mean you're perfect. Integrity means I am just the way I am, whether I'm talking with the Queen of England or my grandkids. That I'm not any different with sitting next to a homeless guy and sharing a sandwich with him, or sitting with you and sharing a chicken dinner. That what you see is what you get. That's integrity. It means you're not dividing your life up, that what you see is what you get. It means you're the same with everybody. You're not perfect. You're just not pretending. You're exactly who you appear to be. That's integrity. You constantly have to be working on that in your life. Integrity. That's the antidote to the lust of flesh. What about the lust of the eyes, which is materialism? The only antidote to materialism, listen, is generosity. The only antidote to materialism, which is get more, get all you can all you get, sit on the can, spoil the rest, get more. The only antidote to getting is giving. Giving, generosity, is a counterculture statement. It goes against the materialism. Every time I give, my heart grows bigger. Every time I give, I break the grip of materialism in my life. Every time I give, I become more like Jesus. God so loved the world that he gave. You can give without loving, but you can't love without giving. You spell love G-I-V-E. Give. Give your time, give your effort, give your energy, give your money. And the more generous you become, the more like Christ you become. That's why 44 years ago, when Kay and I got married, we decided that every year we would increase our tithe. Now, we weren't doing this to show off because we didn't tell anybody about it for over 30 years. But when we got married 44 years ago, we began tithing 10% to God, as the Bible commands. If you're not tithing 10% to God, I'm not talking about giving it to charity. I'm talking about giving it as an act of worship at your place of worship, undesignated. That's called tithing. And God says, you're robbing me if you're not doing that. So Kay and I started tithing 44 years ago, 10%. That's the starting point. The next year, we raised our tithe. Our first year of marriage, we raised it to 11%. The next year, we raised our tithe to 12%. The next year, we actually raised our tithe 3%. Every year in the 44 years we've been married, we have raised our giving another percent. Why? Because every year I want my heart to grow bigger. I want to be more like Jesus. I want to break the grip of materialism in my life. On years that it was really financially tight and the cupboard was bare, we would raise our giving like 0.25%. But it was always more. And on years when I'd get a raise or a windfall or something, we would raise our giving 2, 3, sometimes 4%. So much to the point that right now, well, since 2002, Kay and I have been reverse tithers. We give away 91%, and I live on 9%. I've been playing this game with God now for 44 years. God says, Rick, you give to me and I'll give you. You see who wins. I have lost that game for 44 years. Now, don't misunderstand me. I do not give to get a blessing. I give to be a blessing. I give not to get a blessing. I give to be a blessing. But you can't outgive God. God is not going to let you have the odds in your favor. People have often asked me, why do you think God had you write Purpose-Driven Life? Nobody's more surprised at me. That book just passed. It's still selling millions a year. It just passed 50 million copies in hardback. It is the best-selling book in American history. It was #1 in the New York Times for 4 years. It is the best-selling hardback nonfiction in the English language. It's in Guinness Book of Records. It's also the most translated book in the world, except for the Bible. It's #2. I'm not even an author. I'm a pastor. I'm not a professional author. This book brought in tens of millions of dollars of money. $60 million, $80 million. And if I hadn't had my head screwed on right, I could have gone and bought an island and had people serve me little drinks with umbrellas in it the rest of my life. And I could buy a fleet of Bentleys, but I drove a 20-year-old Ford truck for 20 years, the last 20 years. Why? Gets me the same place your Lamborghini does. And this watch was given to me. It's an Apple Watch. Before that, I had a watch that I paid for $15 for at Walmart. You know what? It keeps the same time as a Rolex. I didn't need it to make me feel good about me. People say, well, shoot, Rick, I'd give away 90% too if I made $60 million, $80 million. No, you wouldn't, because you're not doing it now. See, I had a track record of being generous all those lean years before that happened. People ask me, why do you think God had you write the best-selling book in American in English history? I'll tell you. He knew what I would do with the money. I had a track record of being generous for years. And when that book made all that money, we made actually that was the easy part, what to do with the money. Just give it away. First, I stopped taking a salary from Saddleback Church, let's see, almost 17 years ago. I don't take a salary, I don't take any honorarium anywhere in the world, like for this or any other place. I added up all the church had paid me in the first 23 years, and I gave it back. Why? I love Jesus Christ. And I don't want anybody thinking that I do what I do for money. I remember right after the book came out, Time magazine came, I was going to be on the cover of Time magazine. Little lesson here, folks. I've been on the cover of Time magazine twice and on the cover of Newsweek twice. Once as a hero, once as a zero. Okay? So don't ever get enamored with being on the cover, okay? Because the next time they're going to skewer you, all right? One minute they love you, the next minute you suck, okay? So don't ever spend a second of your life on fame, because today's hero is tomorrow's zero. It's just not worth it. You don't need other people's approval to be happy. You're as happy as you choose to be. You don't need to be famous, because whatever's in style today is going to be out of style tomorrow. Don't even worry about it. But I remember the reporter from the Time magazine came in and sat down, and the big success of purpose-driven life, and her first question is, so, how much do you make a salary for pastor? And I looked at her and I said, well, actually, I've served my church for free for 24 years. She turned white, and she was African-American. She closed her book. That's all the questions I've got. I think she was looking for some kind of Jim Bakker swagger scandal or something. But generosity is the only antidote to materialism. You say, well, I'm not materialistic. Show me your checkbook. Show me how much you're spending on you compared to what you're spending on getting the Bible and a believer and a body of Christ in every tribe in the world. What are you doing? How much of it's going to you? So integrity is the antidote to the first trap. Generosity is the antidote to the second trap. And the more generous you become, the bigger your heart gets, the more God blesses you. You're going to win in the end. You cannot outgive God. Now, what about the last one, the pride of life? Well, the antidote to the pride of life is humility. But most people misunderstand what humility really is. Humility is not going around saying, oh, I'm no good, I'm nothing, I'm terrible, and I'm just not good at it. No, that's actually false humility, because you're begging for compliments. It's like the person saying, now, I made this meal, but it's really not good, and they're begging you to say, oh, it's a great meal. That's false humility. It's actually a form of pride. Humility is not denying your strengths. Humility is being honest about your weaknesses. Humility is not denying your strengths. Humility is being honest about your weaknesses. We're all a bundle of both. I have some great strengths. I have some massive weaknesses. Just ask my family or my staff or anybody who knows me close. I have some massive weaknesses. We're all a bundle of strengths. You have some great strengths. You have some massive weaknesses. Humility is when you're able to be self-aware and honest about all of these. Let me say it another way. Humility is not thinking less of yourself. Humility is thinking of yourself less. If I walk into this room, and we're all standing up and we're talking, and I walk into this room and I'm thinking, I wonder what everybody thinks about me. Do I look right? Is my dress right? Is my suit right? Is my hair right? I'm thinking about me. That's called pride. If I walk into a room and I say, who in this room needs to be encouraged? That's genuine humility. It's not thinking of yourself less. It's thinking of not thinking less of yourself. It's thinking of yourself less. You just don't think about yourself. You're so focused on encouraging other people, you're not even aware of how you look or who you're trying to impress, because you're busy trying to serve. Now let me go back to integrity and we'll wrap this up. A lot of people fall for what I call the Titanic myth. The Titanic was supposed to be the first unsinkable ship. And the reason why is prior to the Titanic, every ship had an empty hull and it was not compartmentalized. So if you had an empty hull and a ship ran into a iceberg, it would open up a hole and the water would float in and fill the entire hull and the ship would sink. So they got the idea, let's compartmentalize the hull. This is the way they do it in submarines. You know, they batten down the hatches. The theory is you can take on water in a certain area of your life or your ship and it still won't sink you because you've got it compartmentalized. Well, theoretically, I get that. But a hole in the boat is a hole in the boat is a hole in the boat. If you and I are sitting out fishing in a boat in a lake, and I start drilling a hole in my end of the boat, and you say, what are you doing, Rick? And I said, well, I'm not bothering anybody else. It's my life. I'm not affecting anybody. I'm just doing this for me. I'm drilling a hole. Well, it's going to sink both of us. Read my lips. Sin may be private, but it's never personal. When you sin, it always affects other people. It affects your wife. It affects your kids. It affects your customers. It affects your staff. You can't sin and not have it affect everybody else. They may never even know it. It still affects the blessing of God on your life. If I go a day or two without a personal quiet time, I notice. If I go 3 or 4 or 5 days without a quiet time, my wife notices. If I were to go a few weeks without a quiet time, my church would notice. You can't sin and it not affect other people. So whatever you think it is you've got compartmentalized, stop it. Just stop it.
So living a compartmentalized life will destroy your spiritual health, and true Christian humility cares about the quality of life for those around us, realizing that all of our actions have consequences on the body of Christ, those who journey with us toward our destiny with Christ. I'm so thankful for Rick's impassioned plea for all of us to take our Christian experience seriously. It's for that purpose that FCCI exists. Our mission is to encourage and equip Christian business leaders to operate their businesses and conduct their personal lives in accordance with biblical principles. We do that through our business leadership groups that meet Monday through Friday at various times throughout the day. If you're not participating in a group that would stimulate your Christian journey through your business endeavors, please consider joining an FCCI BLG today. You can learn more at fcci.org. Thanks for listening, and may God empower you today as you lead a company for Christ.